Hello again, welcome back to another episode. Today we're looking at the Minolta, and this is the X700. So this was the top of the range of the X series. I think I've already covered the X500 and there was an X300 as well. But this was the top of the range one, introduced in 1981. This is a manual focus Minolta. And I think, I might be wrong in this, but these were the last of the manual focus Minoltas before the autofocus Minoltas came out. All black, not sure if it was available in a chrome version. All the ones I've seen seem to be in this black finish. 35mm SLR again. Pretty standard kind of layout. This MPS on the side here stands for Minolta Program System. So that kind of gives you a clue that the camera has a program mode. Quite heavy, quite chunky, there's a lot of metal in it. Base plate's metal, top's metal, I think there's a metal chassis inside of it. It's got this quite nice sort of finger rest or finger grip on the side. But yeah, there's a family of cameras. I think these were still called the X700 in the US, whereas the other ones sort of changed to a 570 and a 370, I think, in the US. But yeah, the usual lug straps. If you've seen the other videos, then you'll know that they put the self timer and the automatic exposure lock on this sort of lever. It's quite hard to see because it's all black. But this lever's got two positions. It's got a down position and an up position. And there's a LED just there, which relates to the use of the self timer. This one's got an MD series lens, and from what I can remember, they recommended using the MD series, although it will take MC lenses as well. And this is a 50mm f2, and this uses the SR mount to take the lens off. There's a little button that you push in, twist anti-clockwise, quarter turn, and off it comes. Bayonet mount, quite nice. Has a similar sort of lug system for communicating the selected aperture as the Nikons. You can see this will focus. Up here there's a coupler that couples to the lens to tell the camera what aperture you've selected, and there's also this lever down here which tells the camera if you've got the minimum aperture selected on the lens. You'll notice that the minimum aperture down at f22 is in green. When that comes round, it activates that little switch to let the camera know that you've got it set on the minimum aperture, which is what you need to do for program mode. This one, unfortunately, it needs a little bit of TLC. You can see in here, I've got my pointy stick, that the damper for the mirror is completely sort of rotted away, which shows it's a genuine sort of camera that hasn't been messed around with, which I kind of quite like. Could do with a bit of a clean inside of there as well. It's got a depth of field preview here, just stops the lens down so you can check on the depth of field. Cable release socket on the side, and a PC flash port on this side, which is quite nice. So that's the front of the camera. On the top we have the standard film advance and a frame counter on this side. It's quite a short throw actually, so it's quite nice. The on-off switch that surrounds, there's this little bump here that surrounds the shutter speed and mode selector. It's all combined into one. Has two positions. You can push it that way, which is on with a beeper, I think, and that one is on without the beeper. I'm pretty sure the beep is relating to a 30th of a second or lower. But yeah, that's your on-off switch. You can have the beep on, or you can have the beep off. There's a little push-in button here that kind of locks this in place. It's also got aperture priority, so if you put it in the A mode, you select the aperture on the lens, and it will work out the corresponding shutter speed for you. You can manually select shutter speeds as well. Hold that lever down and just turn it. So you can see it goes from 1,000th of a second all the way down to 1/60th is highlighted, which I'm presuming is a flash sync speed. So that implies that we've got a horizontal cloth shutter. And you can also put it into program mode, which is what P stands for. But in the P mode, you'd need to set the aperture on the lens to the smallest setting. Otherwise, it will probably default to A for aperture priority. That's the index point, and I think there is there's a film plane indicator down underneath there as well. I think this has also got the film loading window. So as you work through the film, there's a red bar that will travel across here. I've seen that on the X700. Hot shoe, some kind of dedicated flash connections as well as the normal central connection. Because it's got aperture priority, we also get exposure compensation. So we've got 2 stops, plus or minus, of exposure compensation. And here we've got the ISO, ASA speed. So you can just lift up this collar and you can adjust your film speed. He says that just turns to adjust the film speed. Goes from 25 through to 1600, which is not a huge range, but it's more than adequate for everyday shooting, really. And don't forget, you've also got 2 stops of underexposure that you could use to boost it as well. There's a little thing here that locks the exposure compensation, so it's locked in until you push that dial down, and then you can reset it to 0. Usual fold out rewind crank for when you finish shooting the film, and this pulls up in the normal sort of standard kind of fashion now and opens the back. The back again has got quite a nice thumb rest on it. It's quite ergonomically designed camera. Conversion table for the German DIN standard to the American standard, but we use the international standard now, ISO. See, it's got ISO on there. It's got it all on there. Inside here we have the pressure plate, and you can see here again that this foam material is deteriorated. These are the light seals, so this will need to be taken off and replaced. It's just falling apart now. It's not in a particularly good state. That doesn't appear to be light seal material along the sides, but definitely in that door there is. Multi-slotted take-up spool, sprocket drive, and there we see our cloth shutter. There must have been some kind of data back connections there, and this is where your fresh film would go. I'm not going to load it because I want to get this one have its light seals and everything done before I put a film through it. On the bottom, got a winder attachment. The usual push up to rewind lever on the bottom just disengages that sprocket so it can move backwards. Tripod bush. It runs on 2 SR44, LR44 batteries which live underneath this housing, and electrical connections for a winder. Fairly basic camera, but quite nice, having the program and the aperture priority. It's missing shutter priority if you want to be really picky, but I don't particularly use shutter priority much. I think if you're shooting sports or wildlife or something, shutter priority would probably be more important. But for normal everyday shooting, aperture priority just works fine, really. The shutter release is in the centre here. When you first push it down on that side, you'll see there is oh, it's actually focused on that. There's a P for program. Because there's no lens on it, to mount a lens is red dot to red dot. So find the red dot, mount it up to the red dot. He says, if you can see what he's doing, and turn it clockwise until it locks. So yeah, if we got it in program mode and we got that set to there, it doesn't tell you the aperture inside. I don't think there's no window in the pentaprism to show you the aperture that you've selected, so you don't know what the aperture is in program mode. But yeah, if you push down gently on that, probably isn't going to focus on it now because it's got a lens in there. But yeah, you could see that there was a P at the top. That's weird. But yeah, you can see there's a scale of shutter speeds down the side, and there's LEDs next to them that light up to show what shutter speed has been selected. The one complaint about this camera that I see quite often is that when it's in manual mode, it doesn't display the actual shutter speed that you've selected. It displays the shutter speed it thinks you should be using. So you don't actually know what the shutter speed is inside. Sort of kind of get in there. But it's not actually displaying what the actual shutter speed is, which the X500 does. So a lot of people seem to rate the X500 higher than these. I don't normally shoot in manual, I normally shoot in aperture priority. But it's something to take into consideration, as it doesn't show the actual selected shutter speed, whereas the X500 does. Alright, let's stick the lens back on. All in all, I really like Minolta cameras. I prefer the earlier SRT series. But yeah, it's a quality camera. Quite well hyped. I think King Japes is it. He's quite into his Minolta X700s. Same as Bad Flashes and Jason from Grainy Days. I think they're both X700 shooters as well. They can be quite overpriced. I've noticed that on eBay. Some people are asking a lot of money for them. And there's no need to pay a lot of money for these. There's quite a lot of them about, and they shouldn't be hugely expensive. Before making the video, I looked up on eBay, and some were selling for like £160. Yet you can see other ones for sale for £50–60, which would seem to me to be a reasonable amount of money for a body. As always, it's the lenses that are the important part rather than the camera body. As long as it's working, that's all that really matters. But yeah, reliability wise, I think they've got nothing really much to worry about there. It does take a winder, and it also takes a thing called Motor Driver 1, and I do have. This is the Auto Winder G, and this is the winder for this X series of cameras, and this literally just attaches on the bottom. You don't take the batteries out of the camera, leave them in there. I know some cameras, they do run off the batteries in this, in the power drive. I think Nikon or Nikon, there's a few of those where it can run off the battery pack, so it just makes it a bit easier to hold. There isn't a vertical release on it, unfortunately, and this holds a load of batteries. It does make it weigh quite a bit more. It's not too bad actually. It's only 4 AA's that go in there. It's not overly heavy on batteries. On-off switch on the back, so you just turn that on. This is if you want to rewind the film. This just pushes that little bar up, and then yeah, this will just wind automatically. Just set it for shutter speed. It's not a motor drive. It's not particularly quick, but it will advance the film and cock the shutter for you, so you don't need to take your eye off the viewfinder. A little light comes on. That probably stays on when it gets to the end of the film. Doesn't have power rewind. You have to rewind it the usual way. There is also a Motor Drive 1 for it, which can run at about 3.5 frames a second, which is not really fast, but yeah, it's not bad for the time period. But I just find this makes the camera a bit more manageable. It's just a shame it hasn't got a vertical grip on it. The Motor Drive does. The Motor Drive has a vertical shutter release button. down here, which is quite nice. But yeah, that's it, folks. That's the Minolta X700. Not sure whether I'd recommend it or not. I wouldn't recommend it £160, but I would recommend it if you can find one at a decent price. It's sort of a genuine working example. I've had no issue with Minoltas. All the ones I've had have been working, so I've not really had any issues with them. It's the Yashicas are the bane in my life. I can't seem to find Yashicas that work, or Canon A1s, although that problem is sorted for me now. But yeah, that's the video for today. Thank you very much for watching. Comments, questions, queries, etc. down below as usual. Please don't forget to like and subscribe and all that usual YouTube stuff. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye.